And he says, hello, Andre, it's a pleasure. Good to have you with us here, Christopher Russo. And I tell you, you're right. I do think a lot of Americans who are sports fans think, you know what, after Jackie came up in 47 and Dobie with the Indians, everything was hunky-dory. And they didn't realize how much the African-American athlete in baseball had to deal with in a decade of the 50s and even into the 60s. What's your take on that first? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, there's sort of this idea that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier and then everything was just all unicorns and glitter, but it wasn't at all. I mean, as a matter of fact, even in his own career, there was an enormous amount that he achieved and had to fight against by the time he had retired in 1957. But that's what our film is really about. It's really about Jackie's life after baseball as a civil rights leader, and then also the wave of guys that came in under Jackie Robinson and after him, of whom he passed the torch right over to. And so it's really an extraordinary story of these unsung heroes that we haven't had a chance to see.
And remember, let's put it in some of the cities. You know, Cincinnati was a tough town. Frank Robinson had to go play with the Reds. You know, Brooklyn with Jackie, you know, there was a feeling of, you know, of an opening. I'm not sure in some of these Midwest cities that was the case. St. Louis is another example. You got Gibson, you got Brock, you got Flood. That was a tough town in the 50s and the 60s, as was the Queen City in Cincinnati. That is part of this scenario here, too. They didn't all, you know, New York is a little bit more accommodating. Not so much in the Midwest, Andre. How about that for a sec? Let me hear.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we're talking about the St. Louis Cardinals primarily, which is going to be Bob Gibson, Bill White, Curt Flood. Those are our three main characters that we really focus on. Obviously, it was a bit larger than that. But when you're talking about, you know, places like St. Louis and you're talking about the Deep South, especially St. Petersburg, Florida, where they had to do spring training, you know, the black players stayed with the black players. The white players stayed with the white players, often in accommodations that were much greater than the black players. And, you know, that caused a sense of low morale. And you hear Bob Gibson in the trailer really even talking about that. I mean, Bob Gibson, this domineering figure, talking about being in tears because he couldn't stay with his teammates. And so I think we get a human element to this, even for people who aren't fans of baseball, get a human element to this and really understand what discrimination looks like and what it means to actually achieve the highest, you know, athleticism on the field when these players actually step out onto the baseball diamond.
The Yankees were very late with it. L.A. Howard in 55. And, of course, the Red Sox, it took them forever. Pumpsie Green in the late 50s and 59 when he came up. Do you examine why those two franchises took a long time to integrate, Andre? Is that part of the documentary here on Saturday night as well?
It is part of it. Yeah, we don't take the deep dive necessarily on those two teams per se. We take a deep dive as it relates to the battles with the Cardinals, you know, particularly the Yankees and the Red Sox. But yes, you're exactly right. They were the last, you know, two teams to integrate. This was after Jackie Robinson actually retired in 1957. And, you know, it's proof of the thesis of the story, which is just that there was so much more work that needed to be done, just even in Jackie Robinson's career, that we don't often see. So we wanted to bring that to light. We wanted to highlight it and really give a lot of these important figures their due.
When did it get better? I mean, I know the 60s, the civil rights movement, and how, you know, perilous that decade was. I mean, is there a concrete period in baseball history where it became a lot easier for the black baseball player? Was it 1972? Was it 1976? When did, in fact, you see some progress in this relationship?
Yeah, that's a little bit in dispute, you know, with some historians. You know, we did look at that, and you do see a steady rise of black ball players through the 70s with the Pirates, for instance, and then up through the 80s and the 90s. And we start to see a bit of a renaissance, especially peaking, I guess, or plateauing in some way once we get to Ken Griffey Jr., who was also someone we interviewed in the film. And so we did have this large renaissance of black ball players that really brought a style and a flourish to the game that, you know, sits in the annals of history at this point. And so things did eventually get a lot better for the players in the league. And there's a lot of work still to be done. You know, there's a lot of black ball players that we still want to see on the field even to this day. And we get a chance to talk about that in the film.
And last thing, Andre, it also helps that the players are great. Aaron, Milwaukee, great. Gibson, great. Curt Flood, very, very good. Brock, a Hall of Famer, great. You know, Frank Robinson, Cincinnati, great. I mean, you know, it's amazing the amount of great players who came through after Jackie Robinson when he left in '56. How about that?
Yeah, no, it's enormous. Too enormous to fit into a 2-hour movie. You know, like I said, we really focus heavily on the Cardinals team, their unique style of play, which was reminiscent of the Negro Leagues, their speed, their aggressiveness. And also what it is that they accomplished. Bill White, still to this day, being the first black commissioner of a major league across all of sport. You know, Curt Flood and the modern day free agency across all of sport. You know, these are contributions that these men made that changed the world, not just the sport of baseball, but the world as a whole. And we want to pay homage to them, and we get a chance to do that in After Jackie.
I'm looking forward to it. Saturday night, 8 o'clock on the History Channel. Andre, tremendous job. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Appreciate it very much.